My wife raised her champagne glass, smiled at the table, and said, "Honestly, after 28 years, I'd rather dance with a valet than with my husband." The laughter hit fast, sharp, and eager, the kind that rolls through a room when people think they're watching a harmless humiliation. She leaned back in her chair like she had landed the perfect line. Most of them expected me to do what I had always done in rooms like that. Smile tightly. Take the hit. Let her have the moment. I didn't. The anniversary dinner was being held in the main ballroom of the country club just outside Franklin, Tennessee. All polished wood, low chandeliers, and white linen folded so stiff it looked starched into place. The band in the corner was working through old standards, soft enough for conversation, loud enough to cover the clink of cutlery and the private little cruelties people passed across tables. Lauren loved nights like that. Navy silk dress, diamond studs, the gold bracelet our daughter once had made her look old money. She wore confidence the way other people wore perfume. Light, expensive, impossible to ignore. I sat beside her in a charcoal jacket, one hand resting near my water glass, the other under the table, calm and still. Across from us, Derek and his wife were smiling too widely. A few couples from the board turned toward me with that same look people get when they sense a scene coming and hope it gets uglier. Our son Caleb had warned me about that crowd years ago. They don't like honesty, he told me once. They like entertainment. Lauren had been entertaining them for months. It started small, little remarks made in public, so she could call them jokes later. She'd laugh about how predictable I was, how boring I'd become, how I ordered the same bourbon, wore the same watch, said the same things. At home, she was colder, distracted, always checking her phone with the screen tilted away from me. But in public, she was sparkling. That contrast had stopped hurting a while ago. Once I saw it clearly, it started teaching me. So when the laughter around the table swelled and then began to taper off, I reached for my napkin and folded it once. Neat, deliberate. I looked at Lauren, still smiling, waiting for me to play my part. Then I looked past her. I let my eyes settle on Derek for half a second longer than was comfortable. His smile moved first. Just a flicker, barely there. But I saw it, and because I had been preparing for this exact moment, I finally smiled back. I kept my voice even when I spoke to Derek, which made every word travel farther than if I had shouted. "That's generous of you, Lauren," I said, still looking at him. Though if Derek's done borrowing other men's wives, maybe he can ask the valet himself. The room did not react all at once. First there was a pause, thin and strange, like the air had been pulled out of the ballroom. Then a few confused smiles. Someone near the end of the table gave a nervous laugh, expecting me to twist it back into another joke. I didn't. Derek's wife, Mary Ann, turned toward me slowly. "Excuse me." Lauren's face changed before anyone else's did. The color left it in a clean sweep, starting at her mouth. She put her glass down too carefully. "David," she said under her breath, trying to sound offended instead of afraid, "don't be ridiculous." I finally looked at her. "I'm not being ridiculous." Then I looked back at Mary Ann. "I'm sorry you're hearing it like this, but I figured you deserve the truth more than these two deserve protection." Derek straightened in his chair. "Watch yourself." "No," I said. "You should have done that 6 months ago." The band kept playing for another few seconds before trailing off awkwardly. Silverware stopped. Conversations at the surrounding tables started thinning, heads turning in our direction one by one. I could hear the ice settling in someone's drink. Lauren tried to recover first. That was her instinct. Control the room. "He's upset," she said, smiling too hard. "We've had some private stress, and apparently he thought tonight was the time to perform." "Room 214 at the Harpeth Inn," I said. That smile broke. Derek's hand froze around his fork. "Tuesday, February 11th. Paid with a business card ending in 8821 because you didn't want it touching your personal statements. Then again in March. Then in May, when you told Mary Ann you were in Knoxville overnight for a donor breakfast." Mary Ann turned to her husband so fast her chair scraped the floor. Lauren whispered, "Stop." I ignored her. "I have the entry logs, the receipts, and the phone records. I also have the photo Caleb took outside the Riverside Inn when neither of you noticed his truck across the street." At the mention of my son, Lauren looked genuinely shaken for the first time. Derek leaned toward me, voice low and dangerous. You need to think very carefully about what you're doing. I held his stare. I already did. That's why I waited until you were surrounded by the people you lied to. Marianne was no longer looking at me. She was staring at him with a kind of stillness that made the whole table feel colder. And Lauren, the woman who had just mocked me for sport, sat in absolute silence, finally understanding that the joke had ended the second I decided to answer it. I didn't wait for the shouting to start. It always does, just not immediately. There's a moment first, a suspended, fragile silence where everyone is still trying to decide if what they just heard is real. I stood up during that moment, slow, controlled. My chair barely made a sound against the floor. Lauren reached for my wrist. "Sit down," she whispered, her nails pressing just enough to show panic. "We are not doing this here." I gently pulled my hand away. Not forceful, just final. "We're not doing anything," I said quietly. "I already did." Derek was talking now, fast. Try to rebuild something out of nothing. Words like misunderstanding, out of context. "This is insane," started stacking on top of each other. Marianne didn't respond. She just stared at him like she was watching a stranger try to wear her husband's face. Around us, people leaned back, physically distancing themselves from the table as if scandal had weight to it. Lauren stood up next. "You're leaving?" she asked, louder now, her composure cracking at the edges. "So you just drop this and walk out like, what? Like you're above it?" I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. "I'm done participating," I said. That was the last thing I gave her. No anger, no raised voice, no scene she could reshape later. Just absence. The hallway outside the ballroom was quiet, carpeted thick enough to swallow footsteps. The music behind me cut off completely as the doors swung shut. For a second, I stood there, adjusting my cuff like I had just stepped out of a meeting. Then I walked. The night air outside was cool, sharp against my face. Valet lights glowed across the drive. I handed over my ticket, and the kid jogged off without recognizing me. That felt appropriate. By the time I was on the road, my phone was already vibrating. Lauren, again, and again. I didn't answer. Instead, I drove 40 minutes north, past the edges of town where the streetlights thinned out and the road stopped pretending to be polished. The townhouse sat at the end of a quiet row, identical units. Clean lines, nothing personal about them. That's exactly why I chose it. I parked, stepped inside, and locked the door behind me. No photos, no shared furniture, no history, just a couch, a table, a bed, and a set of documents already waiting in a folder on the counter. I poured myself a glass of water, sat down, and finally checked my phone. 17 missed calls, 8 messages. The last one read, "Where are you?" I looked at it for a moment, then turned the phone face down. Back at the house we shared, everything would still be in place. Lights on timers. Coffee set for the morning. Her closet full. My side empty. I had made sure of that, because when Lauren walked through that door later that night, she wasn't just coming home to silence. She was coming home to a life that was still running perfectly, just without me in it. It didn't start at that dinner. By the time Lauren made that joke, I was already finished with her. The beginning was quieter, almost forgettable, if Caleb hadn't been paying attention. It was late afternoon when he called me, his voice flat in that controlled way he uses when something doesn't make sense yet. "Dad, are you home?" "No." "Why?" A pause. Wind in the background. Then, "I think I just saw Mom." That wasn't unusual. But then he added, she wasn't alone. I didn't ask questions right away. I've learned that rushing people changes what they say. So I let the silence stretch until he filled it. "Riverside Inn," he said. She was getting out of a car. Derek was already there. I remember looking out the office window at the parking lot, watching nothing in particular. My reflection in the glass looked calm. It always does. "Are you sure?" I asked. Another pause. Then I took a picture. That was the moment everything shifted. Not because of the photo, because of the angle. Caleb doesn't exaggerate, doesn't speculate. If he says something, it's because he's already verified it in his own head. When he sent the image, I didn't react right away. I studied it. Lauren, in a light coat, hair down, smiling in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. Derek, leaning slightly toward her, like proximity was already familiar. Too close for coincidence. Too relaxed for chance. That night, Lauren came home and asked me about my day. I told her it was productive. She told me she had a long meeting. I nodded, poured her a glass of wine, and listened. That was the last normal conversation we ever had. After that, I stopped reacting and started building. I opened a separate account the next morning. Not hidden, just unshared. Then I met with a financial advisor under the pretense of restructuring long-term assets. Quietly, I began separating what I could without triggering attention. Documents were copied, statements downloaded, passwords changed in layers, never all at once. At home, nothing changed. I still made coffee in the mornings, still asked about her day, still sat beside her on the couch while she scrolled through her phone, smiling at things she didn't share. But I watched. Patterns formed quickly once I stopped ignoring them. Tuesday afternoons, late committee meetings, calls taken in the car instead of the kitchen, and Derek's name appearing just often enough in conversation to seem normal, if you weren't listening for intent. I never confronted her, because confrontation gives people a chance to adapt. I needed her to stay comfortable, predictable, careless. Weeks turned into months, and the file grew. Photos, timestamps, financial movements. Enough to understand not just what was happening, but how deep it went. By the time that anniversary dinner arrived, I didn't need answers anymore. I had structure, I had proof, and most importantly, I had timing. Lauren thought she was in control of the narrative. She thought I was still the man who absorbed things quietly because he didn't see them clearly. She was half right. I was quiet, but I saw everything. The affair would have been enough for most people. For me, it was just the surface. The deeper problem revealed itself in numbers. It started with something small, too small for Lauren to think I'd notice. A transfer from our joint account labeled as an event deposit. $5,000. Reasonable on its own. She sat on 2 charity boards. Money moved often. But then it happened again. 7,000. Then 12. Always spaced out. Always with clean descriptions. Always just below the threshold that triggers automatic review alerts. Careful, but not careful enough. I didn't question it. Not out loud. Instead, I went back through 6 months of statements and built a timeline. Dates. Amounts. Recipients. Patterns don't lie. Every transfer aligned with one thing. Her meetings with Derek. That was when I stopped looking at this as an affair and started looking at it as a system. I traced the account the money was going into. It was registered under a small event planning venture. New. Barely any history. Clean branding. No real footprint beyond a website and a few stage photos. On paper, it looked legitimate. In reality, it was hollow. No consistent vendor payments. No real client flow. Just incoming money. And silence after. I sat at the townhouse desk one night. Laptop open. The room lit only by the screen. My reflection stared back at me again. Same calm expression. Same steady breathing. Inside, everything was aligning. Derek wasn't just meeting Lauren in hotels. He was guiding her. Positioning her. Convincing her she was investing in something exciting, independent, hers. I could almost hear him saying it. You deserve your own thing. You've always had a great eye for this. This could be yours. And Lauren, who had spent years curating an image of capability and taste, would have believed every word. Not because she was foolish, because she needed to believe it. I pulled the transaction logs again and ran totals. Over 4 months, she had moved just over $83,000, our money, into something that didn't exist. That was the moment I understood the second layer. Derek wasn't building a future with her. He was extracting one from her. And the most precise part of it, she didn't even know she was being used. To her, it was partnership. To him, it was exit strategy. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes for a second. Affairs are emotional. This was structural. Planned, and suddenly, The dinner made even more sense. The confidence, the public mockery. Lauren thought she was stepping into a better life, one where she had control, admiration, something of her own. She didn't realize she had already signed it away. I opened my eyes and looked back at the screen. Then I added one more folder to the file. Financial exposure. Because when everything finally collapsed, and this part wouldn't just hurt her reputation. It would dismantle everything she thought she had secured. And I wasn't going to interrupt it. I was going to let it complete itself. Brooke was the only variable I couldn't control. Caleb had already seen enough. He didn't need convincing. He trusted what he saw, and more importantly, he trusted me. But Brooke, she was different. She believed in her mother, not blindly, but deeply. To her, Lauren wasn't just a parent. She was structure, stability, the person who held everything together when I was working late, traveling, distracted. Brooke had built her understanding of family around that version of her, which meant one thing. If I told her the truth too early, I would lose her. So I waited, even after the dinner, even after I moved out, even after Lauren started calling her, shaping the narrative the only way she knew how, carefully, emotionally, positioning herself as the one who had been blindsided. I didn't interrupt it, because partial truth is stronger than denial, and Lauren was giving her just enough to hold on to. A week after I left, Brooke finally called me. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Dad, what's going on?" I stood by the window in the townhouse, looking out at nothing in particular. Same position, same calm. "What have you been told?" I asked. A pause. "That you embarrassed Mom. That you accused her of something insane in front of everyone. That you just left." Of course. I nodded to myself, even though she couldn't see it. "I did leave," I said. "That part is true." Another pause, then quieter. "Did she cheat on you?" I didn't answer immediately. Timing matters. "Come by tomorrow," I said. "I'll show you everything." She hesitated. "Everything?" "Yes." She showed up at exactly 10:12 the next morning. Same punctuality she had as a kid. Same composed posture. But her eyes were different. Searching. Defensive. I didn't hug her. Not because I didn't want to. Because I needed her to stay clear. The folder was already on the table. Printed. Organized. No emotion attached to it. Just facts. She sat down slowly. "What is this?" The version no one can argue with. I watched her as she opened it. First, the photos. Riverside Inn. Hotel entries. Time-stamped. Her breathing changed slightly. Then the call logs. Frequency. Duration. Patterns. Then the financial records. Transfers. Accounts. Amounts. Her hand stopped moving. "Wait, what is this?" she asked, pointing. "Money your mother moved without telling me." She looked up at me, and for the first time, her certainty cracked. "This doesn't make sense." I slid my phone across the table. "One more thing." She pressed play. Lauren's voice filled the room. Calm, intimate, unfiltered, not a confession. Something worse. Familiarity. Plans. Assumptions about a future that didn't include me. Brooke didn't stop it. She let it play all the way through. When it ended, the silence in the room was heavier than anything at that dinner. She sat there, staring at nothing, then finally asked, almost to herself, "How long?" "Long enough," I said. She nodded slowly, and just like that, the version of her mother she had believed in her entire life started to collapse under the weight of what she could no longer deny. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It started quietly. That's always how it begins when reputation is involved. A missed call here, an unanswered message there, an invitation that never came. Lauren noticed it before anyone said it out loud. She lived in that world. Charity boards, private luncheons, carefully curated friendships where status was currency and perception was everything. And perception had shifted. At first, people were polite, concerned, measured. They asked neutral questions. "How are you holding up?" We heard there was some tension. They gave her space to control the narrative. But truth has a way of leaking through the edges, especially when it's documented. Marianne filed for divorce within 2 weeks. Not quietly, and not kindly. Derek had underestimated her. He thought she would protect the image the same way he had always done. Instead, she dismantled it. Financial disclosures, private messages, irregular accounts. She didn't just expose the affair. She exposed everything attached to it. The same circles that once protected Derek started distancing themselves with precision. Invitations disappeared. Business partners paused communication. People who used to greet him by name suddenly preferred not to recognize him at all. And Lauren was tied to him, which meant she went down with him. Her board position was the first to go. Officially, it was framed as stepping back to focus on personal matters. In reality, she was pushed out. Too much noise, too much risk, too much association. Her friends followed the same pattern. Not dramatic exits, just absence, calls not returned, plans that quietly dissolved, people choosing distance over involvement, because no one wants proximity to a situation that can damage them. I heard most of it secondhand, not because I was asking, because information travels. And when someone falls from that kind of height, people talk. Lauren tried to stabilize it at first. She hosted a small gathering, reached out individually, tried to explain. But explanation requires credibility, and hers was gone. The financial side made it worse. Once the transfer started getting questioned, once the event venture became visible for what it was, her position became indefensible, not just socially, legally. She had moved money, signed documents, participated in something she didn't fully understand. And Derek was already pulling away, minimizing contact, shifting responsibility, positioning himself for survival. The same man she thought she was building something with was now creating distance from her as fast as possible. Predictable. By the time the full picture surfaced, Lauren wasn't just dealing with a broken marriage. She was dealing with isolation, reputation damage, financial exposure, and the slow realization that everything she thought she was stepping into was already collapsing underneath her. I didn't intervene, didn't comment, didn't correct anything publicly, because none of it required my voice anymore. The structure I had built did exactly what it was supposed to do. It removed me from the damage and left everything else to unfold on its own, quietly, completely, and without me in it. Lauren thought the worst had already happened. From her perspective, it made sense. The marriage was over. Her reputation had taken a hit. Derek had distanced himself. The social circle had gone quiet. That felt like the bottom. It wasn't, because there was one part of the structure she never saw. The part that didn't depend on me. About 3 weeks after everything surfaced, her employer opened an internal review. No announcement, no warning, just a formal request for documentation tied to several irregular financial interactions. She didn't understand at first. Why would her job care about what she did outside of work? Then the questions got more specific. Transfer patterns, account names, timing, overlap with business contacts. That's when it clicked. The money she moved wasn't isolated. It intersected with her professional position, which meant it crossed a line she didn't even realize existed. The kind of line companies take very seriously, especially when reputation is involved. She tried to explain it, position it as a personal investment, a misunderstanding. But the documentation didn't support that, because the documentation didn't lie. And unlike social circles, companies don't step back quietly. They investigate. At the same time, Derek disappeared. Not gradually. Completely. His number stopped working. Emails bounced. Office closed. And within a week, there was a confirmed sighting. Florida. No announcement. No explanation. Just gone. He didn't fight anything. Didn't defend himself. Didn't try to repair his image. He exited. Clean. Fast. Exactly the way someone does when they were planning it long before anyone else realized. Lauren didn't expect that. She tried reaching him. Repeatedly. Calls. Messages. Anything. Nothing came back. That was the moment the illusion finally broke. Not at the dinner. Not when I left. Not when her social circle collapsed. But here, when she realized the one person she thought she was building a future with had never been building anything at all, just preparing his escape. And she was part of the funding. The legal pressure started building after that. Requests for clarification turned into formal inquiries, then into meetings, then into consequences she couldn't talk her way out of, because for the first time in her life, presentation didn't matter. Facts did, and facts don't respond to charm. I heard about all of it the same way I heard everything else. Indirectly. Quiet updates. Fragments of information. Enough to understand the shape of it. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not in the way people expect. Just confirmation. Everything had followed the structure, exactly as it was always going to. Lauren thought she had stepped into something better, something more exciting, more alive. Instead, she had stepped into a situation that was designed to collapse the moment it was fully exposed. And when it did, there was no one left standing next to her. She found me 6 months later. Not at home, not at the townhouse, at Caleb's office. He had warned me that morning. "She's been asking where you are," he said, standing by the door, arms crossed. I didn't tell her, but she's getting desperate. I nodded. That was always going to happen. I didn't change my schedule, didn't avoid it, because avoidance suggests uncertainty, and I had none left. She was waiting in the lobby when I arrived. For a second, I didn't recognize her, not because her face had changed, but because everything else had. The posture, the precision, the control she used to carry like armor, gone. Her hair was pulled back too quickly, like she hadn't decided how she wanted to present herself. No jewelry, no polish, just someone trying to hold something together that was already falling apart. When she saw me, she stood up immediately. "David." Same voice, but thinner. I stopped a few feet away. Not close enough for contact. Not far enough to seem distant. "What do you want, Lauren?" No hostility. No warmth. Just direct. She let out a breath like she had been holding it for weeks. "I need to talk to you." "You're talking." That threw her off for a second. She expected resistance, emotion, something she could work with. Instead, she got nothing to push against. Her eyes searched my face. "You really just disappeared." "I left," I corrected. "There's a difference." Her jaw tightened. "You didn't even try to fix it." I looked at her for a moment, measured, then said, "Fix what?" That was the first crack. She looked away briefly, then back. Everything. Us. The marriage. "The marriage ended long before I left," I said calmly. "You just didn't notice because you were busy building something else." Her expression shifted. Defensive now. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Silence stretched between us. People moved in the background. Phones rang. Life continued around the conversation, like it didn't matter. To me, it didn't. To her, it was everything. She stepped closer. "He lied to me." There it was. Not an apology. A redirect. I didn't respond. She continued. Faster now. "Derek. He manipulated everything. The money, the business, all of it. I didn't know. I thought." "I know what you thought," I said. She stopped. I held her gaze. "You thought you were upgrading your life." That landed. Her eyes flickered, then hardened. "That's not fair." "No," I said. "It's accurate." She shook her head slightly, frustration building. "You don't understand what he told me." "I don't need to." Her voice rose just enough to break her composure. "You don't get it. I was being used." I tilted my head slightly. "Of course you were." That wasn't what she expected. She blinked. "Then why are you acting like this is all on me?" "Because it is." The words settled heavy between us. She stared at me, something close to anger returning now that she had something to push against. "He lied. He planned everything. He. And you chose him," I said quietly. That stopped everything. No movement. No defense. Just stillness. "You chose him," I repeated. "Before the money. Before the lies unraveled. Before any of this fell apart." Her eyes dropped. For the first time since I'd seen her, she had nothing ready. No narrative, no angle, no recovery. I stepped back slightly, not to leave yet, just enough to create space. You didn't end up here because of Derek, I said. You ended up here because of a series of decisions you made when everything still looked good. Her voice, when it came, was almost gone. So that's it. That's it. She looked up at me, searching for something. Regret, bitterness, anything. I gave her none of it. Take care of yourself, Lauren. And then I turned and walked away, the same way I had that night in the ballroom, without raising my voice, without looking back. And this time, there was nothing left for her to follow. The divorce finalized 11 months after that meeting. Clean, structured, exactly as it had been set up to be from the beginning. No drawn-out arguments. No last-minute surprises. The documentation handled everything before it ever reached the courtroom. By the time it was official, there was nothing left to fight over, only outcomes to accept. I kept what I had already separated. She kept what remained. There was no negotiation left in it, just execution. The townhouse became temporary, a transition point. 6 months later, I moved again, this time by choice, not necessity. A house just outside the city. Quiet, wide windows, nothing excessive, just space that belonged entirely to me. Caleb visited often. Brooke took longer, but she came. Not all at once, not easily, but consistently. And that was enough. We didn't talk about Lauren much. Not because it was forbidden, because it was no longer central. The truth had already done its work. There was nothing left to analyze, only to move past. Lauren, from what I heard, never fully recovered her position. She tried. New circles, new routines, different versions of the same presentation. But reputation doesn't reset easily once it breaks at that level. And Derek never came back. No explanation, no return, just absence. The kind that confirms everything you already understood. Years pass the way they're supposed to when there's no chaos left controlling them. Quietly, steadily. I didn't rush anything. Didn't try to replace what was gone. I built instead. Routine first, then stability, then something better. I met her 2 years later. Not at an event, not through connections. Just a normal introduction, in a normal place, without performance attached to it. Her name was Elena. She didn't ask for explanations. Didn't need a version of me to present. She paid attention to what was in front of her and responded to that. No games, no angles, no hidden structure underneath it. Just clarity. That was enough. More than enough. One evening, years after everything, I was standing in the kitchen of that house, watching the light fade to the windows, a quiet kind of stillness settling into the room. Elena was in the other room, reading. Caleb had called earlier. Brooke had sent a message. Simple things. Normal things. The kind of life that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. I thought, briefly, about that night at the country club. The laughter, the joke, the moment everything shifted, and how easily it could have gone differently if I had stayed the man they expected me to be. But I didn't. I didn't fight, didn't argue, didn't try to fix something that was already built on failure. I stepped out of it and let it collapse on its own. That was the difference. Not revenge, not punishment, just absence. And what replaced it was better in every way that actually mattered. Because in the end, the strongest response to betrayal isn't destruction. It's this, building a life so stable, so clear, and so far removed from what broke you, that none of it can reach you anymore.